Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for being with me today. And it's like I have been following you for a very long while, especially as an Australia was scholarship holder. Congratulations on that. But before we go further, over to you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, very tired after a full day of work, but very happy to be doing this. It's a
Of
good break.
course. Yeah. On that note, I think you did break into the development sector. So anyone who is with us today, hopefully after that, could you walk us a bit through? Although I know it's been a while, you got the Australia one, but what was your pre-Australia journey like?
Very, very interesting question, especially because I have a degree in finance. And then I jumped into the
Oh,
development sector. So I had a change of heart while I was doing my BBA, and that's when I realized I wanted to do something meaningful, something that gives me a purpose in life. And I think I did not want
yeah,
to sell soap and washing powder and something else.
yeah,
Just something a bit more. So it was difficult. It was very challenging at first
yeah,
because I come from a business school, and wahan pe, I did not have the resources or information available, or the jobs kind of available as to how to get into it. I did not have any seniors or alumni that I could reach
yeah,
out to. However, there were few of them that had gone into the social sector somehow. And then I think what helped me decide was doing an internship with TCF. So I was studying at IB, and IB came up with this policy that everybody has to do a social internship. And I was working at TCF, and I think that was my first interaction with people,
yeah,
with seeing how much we can change using the same skills that I learned during my BBA, management, finance, marketing, and everything, but just instead of profit, purpose, right?
yeah,
So just
yeah.
shift of change. So I think that's what I learned from that internship. And then after my graduation, it was a difficult journey to convince my parents, my family that, I want to work in a space that is very different from my studies.
Yeah.
And I'll be very honest, बहुत challenging था. They did not understand at first. They thought I'm not getting a job, I'm not getting offers, and and even though I had good grades, हुआ कुछ यूं कि then there was a compromise. I started working at the university because I
Okay.
found a good role within the organization, and I started working on alumni and resource mobilization. So really working with scholarship kids, working on fundraising, for social causes. And I
I love
realized,
my
oh
job
no,
here.
yeah, so I really liked it. And that's when, and because I would also sometimes manage a job portal. So I think this one opportunity came around, which was a very I would say a start entry level position
Yeah,
of, an outreach officer, somebody who goes in the field and does all these things. It wasn't fancy. Most of my friends were in fancy roles and
yeah,
fancy buildings, earning fancy salaries and, having a great package and cars. And I had literally nothing.
yeah. Good part.
But so I went for that interview, and it was a peace building program, and they wanted people, and fresh new young ideas. So I think that was my first role, and I think for people to break into that sector, this is where my big tip would be that don't go with big expectations, or I want to land a program manager role. You can start from the bottom because you learn so much from doing from understanding the community. So very community level roles are, I believe, the best sort of entryway, a foot in the door, because from there you can build your way upwards. You have the capacity, you
Definitely.
have the skills, you'll make your way. But then that experience that you gain is so valuable, right? So
I
yeah, that's how I broke into it.
nice. I thank you for just kind of going down the memory lane. I know it's difficult to remember where did I start from, but it was like very clarified. And building on that, if you say someone who's now breaking into the development sector, times have changed kind of, and we know that development sector is under big funding cut. So now
Absolutely.
what will be your kind of like, hey, this is what you need to do.
Hmm. I think yeah, I think it's something that even people like us, mid-career professionals, are struggling with because USAID shut down, and USAID was
Yeah.
responsible, or US government was responsible for a lot of funding in the development sector. I think it's given us a moment to rethink about how we do development and how we do this work, number one. And at the same time, I think what it's told us that, we need to come up with local solutions. We cannot depend
Yeah.
on international actors. So I think being in Pakistan, there is so much scope to work for local NGOs and local INGOs. So organizations like I mentioned TCF, right? And there are multiple other organizations working in the development sector that are homegrown.
Yeah.
At the same time, a lot of corporates are now understanding the value of CSR, and it's not just a marketing gimmick anymore. They really
Yeah.
have very robust CSR programs. I know I'm from Karachi, and there are a lot of industries based in Karachi, a lot of pharmaceutical and manufacturing sector, and some of them have very robust CSR sections, right? They fund literature festivals, they fund educational programs, they fund water projects. So there's definitely a lot of scope. And we need to have an open mind. There's no USAID anymore. So let's just
Yeah.
get rid of that dream that we'll be working for USAID, but there's definitely scope for local NGOs. So do go for that. I know some friends who work with Engro Foundation, people who work for the Dowd Foundation, who run science
Yeah.
museums,
Yeah.
cultural centers. So there's so much work that's happening. So just it's a matter of perspective, and not being afraid of starting from the bottom.
I know I can imagine that even if I have to start from bottom because and that brings me to the next kind of thinking I want to do here. So you decided like okay I need an international master. So Australia was that is very prestigious. You brought all your 5 years of work experience with you on the program. How was the application process? I know it's a lot to talk about, but very briefly, how if you remember?
I think I'll be very honest. It was a
Yeah.
miracle. And I will say that I got very lucky
Mhm.
because I know a lot of people don't get lucky, especially during their first couple of applications, right? So
Yeah.
I believe, I will be very honest that I don't think, at first I didn't think that I deserved it even because it came fairly easily, I would say. I had applied to some other scholarships before, one or two, but I know people who get who apply 4 times, 5 times, 6 times to
Yeah.
multiple reasons. The process was tough. The reason why I wanted to go for a master's is because at that time, I realized that to go up in my career, I needed to have a postgrad degree. Number one, a lot of jobs requirement was a minimum master's. And even in my own organization where I was at the time, to get promotion, it was very clear that if you don't have a master's, you will not be
Oh,
promoted.
yeah, I've
Even though
heard that a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
so
heard that a lot.
unfortunately, I had the skills, experience, but somehow this was a barrier that I was facing, and I was ambitious. So that's when I started thinking about masters. Um, and also because I had a BBA, a business degree, I
Yeah,
thought I lacked the theoretical knowledge.
I
I
understand.
had a lot of practical knowledge, and I thought I need to supplement it with some theory, and that's not a bad idea. So I started looking for scholarships. I come from a middle class background, so it was difficult for me to, afford an international
Yeah, I
education.
need full funding.
Absolutely. So the Australia Watch process, I think, was rigorous. The application portal opens somewhere around January or February every year and
Yeah,
goes up until April. So you have 2 months to fill that in. It was quite a rigorous process with personal statements, with references, with lots of documentation, because it's a government scholarship, right? So they definitely want to assess every aspect of your application, your experience, your education, getting your degrees attested. So there's a lot of prerequisites that are
yeah,
involved.
yeah,
What I would recommend to any future applicant is as soon as the portal opens, because every year they also make changes to the application. As soon as the portal opens in February, have a look through the entire application. Just make a note of every requirement, every question, and make timelines accordingly. Like how much time would you need for a degree attestation, how much time you need for a person statement, and
mm,
other things. So starting early and not waiting for the deadline, because at the end, the portal sometimes also malfunctions. There are too many people applying and updating. So start early, make a note of all the requirements. References take a lot of time. I
of
remember
course.
when my last reference was like the
Yeah,
last day of the
hello.
application. So if you can preempt that and plan it well ahead,
Yeah,
it will just save a lot of anxiety at the end.
okay.
Yeah.
On that note, even on your advice of starting early, I think we can also add that the handbook is available online. You can take your time and go through the handbook, even if it's not for the
Absolutely.
current year of your application. But the whole handbook, it tells you exactly which master's program you should be aiming. I think I always
Absolutely.
get confused, although I'm a consultant, but it's good to be learning. They often emphasize that your second master should be like kind of advanced compared to your first master. So advanced in terms of what? How do you determine if it's advanced?
Okay. Very, very interesting and very relevant question. I think the Australia was, because it's a government to government sort of,
Yeah,
part of the government to government support to Pakistan, Australian governments. One thing that it's a tip is that every year their priorities also keep changing. So when you say advanced, there's also that element of advanced, which I will come to later, but there's also the question of relevance. They really want to support priority areas. So for instance, I'll give you an example. When I was applying on my during my year, they were very clearly, sometimes not so
yeah,
clearly. It is on their website as to what is their foreign policy towards South Asia or Southeast Asia. And if they say, for instance, disability, or they say women's economic empowerment, or they say water resource management, then automatically those are the sort of applicants that will rank higher or will have bonus points.
yeah,
So, so it's a tip that if you are aligned, or if your work is aligned with their priorities,
yeah,
you have a better chance. So I
yeah,
was working in the disability sector at the time, and I believe that gave me an edge when I said the process was
yeah,
easy for me. I think it's because, that matched with their priority and me, and there was a couple of other people also who were working on disability who were selected that year. I think gender also plays a very important role. They really do focus on inclusion, and by gender, I would say gender and inclusion.
okay,
So they want to have a diverse cohort. I know from other countries as
yeah,
well, prefer they would, if you are a minority, or if you are
yeah,
from a marginalized background, or if you are a person with disability, don't shy away from talking about it
yeah,
in a respectful way or a dignified way, because that will not be a disadvantage. In fact, it will be an advantage.
yeah,
They really, really want to support people who otherwise do not have
yeah,
opportunities. So highlighting that in a very positive way really, really helps, and they really encourage, and they really do. And that's something that I'm witness of,
okay.
that more than half of my cohort was women.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Glad
and
you
we
told me
had
that. I'm really glad you emphasized on the disability because for that it just seems like it may not be very expected, but it encouraged that if you don't have that privilege, you can build that privilege now.
Absolutely. And if, for instance, if you're a person with disability, I remember they would specifically ask if you want reasonable adjustments, etc. So it was
Yeah,
an inclusive process. And both here and also later in Australia, I think they're very high on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and they really try to practice it and not just preach it. So in that sense, the second part was advanced degree. I think what they really want to see is how your work and your degree are also aligned. So if, for instance, I'm working on disability, yet I say I want to do an MBA or I want to do a law degree, right? It does
yeah,
not matter. Right.
Yeah,
So they also want to see relevance. They want to, because the whole point is that you have to go back to your home country
yeah.
and serve in your serve the community there. So they want to see that after 2 years, how relevant that degree would be to Pakistan and
Okay.
Pakistan's current sort of social and political and economic needs. So if it is aligned with that, and you can build that connection clearly as to why you're going for a certain degree, I think that really helps. So that advanced degree that I'm talking about is where the element of, you explain the connection between your current work, your degree, and also when you go back, how will that impact? So this whole cycle.
Just
Um,
connecting the dot. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So it should reflect in every aspect of your application.
Yeah, I know it's a lot to know that connecting the dots, but when you have lots of experience, it's easier that way. I remember about advising someone who had like 3 years of work experience after the undergrad and 2 years during the undergrad, but it didn't help because while they were doing really impactful work in the education sector, I think there's a reason why they ask for 5 years of work experience that is progressively relevant and building up over the
Absolutely.
years. Yeah. Would that
Absolutely.
look like you have
Absolutely.
been promoted or had your work scope increased? What does that look like?
I think that's exactly what you mentioned, that perhaps they look at your trajectory, at how you have progressed in your career. I think not necessarily being promoted, but I think in terms of role, in terms of
Yeah,
what you've covered. Because when you add your experience, when you put a lot of information there, that's when you can demonstrate actually
yeah,
that, okay, while just in my project associate role in this so and so position, I also did this. I also did that. I took initiative and I did that. Plus, also, I think a lot of volunteer experience. So I think that when, after your work experience, if that's also something that you've been doing, it just adds a lot of value. So they want to see somebody they definitely want to see leaders. They definitely want to pick up the best of the lot. So they look for leaders, look for people who are driven, people who are proactive, because obviously they also want to think about those 2 years that we're spending in that country, how can we contribute over there, right?
yeah,
So obviously, I mean, naturally, if I was investing in somebody, I would try to,
yeah.
maximize. So they look at those things, how valuable you could be to also, their campus environment and their community. And they highly encourage you to do that when you're there, to engage in community work, to engage in internships,
Okay.
to engage in social events in the university. The scholarship itself keeps so many social events that you end up
Okay.
meeting
Like the
lots of
networking
people.
event they arrange for you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, lots of them.
Did you like had a global event on the Australia program, like global networking based on your thematic area, something like that?
So Australia Awards is in a lot of countries, and so every university will have
Yeah,
its own Australia Awards sort of club, which is directly managed by the scholarship team,
yeah,
right? And so that way they have an idea and they make sure everybody attends the events. They will try to engage everybody. So, just not just social events, but adventurous events. So you would take people out
yeah,
to the outback, to the beach or something. So just something for everybody, and also conferences. So I remember there was a lot of support given for instance, if I want to attend, I once attended a fantastic conference in the University of Sydney, which is fully supported by the local scholarship team. I just
well
had
done.
to make an application and with a small grant, tell them that I've been selected and this will be the cost, so they covered everything. So in that way, they are very supportive. They really want to make the best use of your time there. They also keep on having their own conferences and workshops during the time. So, if, for instance, something on education management will happen, and they'll pick, everybody who's doing an education degree, no matter which country they're from. So there's a lot of inter-country, or I would say,
There's so much thing
um,
going on, and you're like, I don't
there
want to
is.
miss out on this,
Exactly, exactly.
like
So
on
there's a
that.
lot of interaction with other
Yeah.
scholars. We call them scholars. So other scholars from other countries doing the same thing, all over Australia. So, if they have 15, 20 scholars
Wow.
working
Nice.
on, say, climate change and gender. So they'll probably do a workshop and then they'll get everybody together and get them to exchange ideas and come up with something nice and cool.
Nice.
So I really appreciate how they like to create these communities of practice and just upskill, not just from in the classroom, but also through these opportunities.
Well, this was, I think, very similar to Fibra, but I'm very like just listening to you. I think going more on the community side. I think I have to give this to Australia Award. It's better on that front. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll say
And
they are.
how was like just being candid here, how was like returning back to Pakistan? Did your interest change over time? I think we don't talk enough about how difficult it is to just lose track because you have that support network when you are in a fully funded scholarship program, and this is a pattern coming up now that returning back is not just about cultural shock, it's about losing track of the community you had built on the program, and now you don't have that, or you're rebuilding again.
Extremely real and hits home, I think. Oh God, it's reminding me of how I felt. Um, Definitely this reverse culture shock, no matter how realistic
Yeah,
or pragmatic you are, that oh, this is just 2 years. I don't want to get attached. To get attached. 2 years is a long time to make friends, to build a community, to meet locals. I know I remember there were some locals who were almost like family who would invite us to Christmas dinners and also community events. If I'm celebrating Eid, I'll celebrate it with them. If we have Diwali happening, everybody's celebrating Diwali together. So that multiculturalism definitely I used to miss a lot, and reverse culture shock was real. Um, Coming from a first world country where there's established systems, and systems work, to coming back to your home country where there are a lot of problems, there's a lot to solve.
yeah,
It definitely sometimes feels like a step back, I'll be honest.
yeah,
And it is depressing. And I think I was in that phase for almost 2 or 3 months after my coming back. I'll be very honest. I don't want to be, I don't want to give
engage
a
with
sense of
anyone.
humor or fake it. Yes, it
Yeah,
is real, real emotions. Like you said, I had a fantastic support network, a group of friends there that I had to leave behind. Everybody moved to other parts of the world, and I had to come back. So it was difficult. It definitely is difficult. But I think also another difficult part is where sometimes, and or a lot of times, there were a lot of civil servants with us, by the way. So Australia Award supports a lot of civil
yeah,
servants. So they had jobs to come back to. We did not. So unknown civil servants, people who
yeah.
resigned. And so we had to start things from scratch.
Build everything from scratch. Yeah,
It does. And somehow because you're not here, you lose touch with your network over here as well. So you don't know where, there is definitely a transition time. You don't find a job or work immediately, unless you're an entrepreneur and you start your own thing. It takes a while. It does
yeah,
take a while. It takes a lot of working from the ground up again, from zero. So I think requires a lot of strength, a lot of resolve, a lot of dedication. There are some really, really bad days where you feel like, you know,
yeah.
why did I do this master's? It didn't really help. I'm applying to 20 places.
Question everything.
I'm only getting calls from one place, which is not even on my top five. So it is frustrating. It is very frustrating. But I think you have to understand that there needs to be, I believe that was a time where I really needed to have a mentor. It was almost like there was a vacuum. So once you come back, I think there needs to be a return home sort of post scholarships,
Yeah,
mentorship, I don't know, that helps you readjust.
yeah.
So I did struggle with that a lot. Lots of interviews, not getting calls back, feeling like an imposter, as if, oh, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
So lots of thoughts. But I think the key is to be consistent, and just have some sort of support system. Of course, I did, and that really helped me get through that time. However, I know a lot of people who don't. I know some people with me who
Yeah,
struggled for
yeah. I'm
months,
one of
7
the.
months, 8 months. Yeah, and that's a reality. I think it took me 4 months. The first month I was chilling, obviously coming
What?
home. The second and third I was applying for jobs and interviews and everything. And the fourth is when, I got something nice. But then I had friends who did not, okay, so they were getting offers, but they were not um the same, it's not what they deserved, I would say, as their caliber. So that took some time, and that's a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think thank you for being very honest, going through. I'm glad. And on that note, my video just got frozen and I'm coming back. It happened with Zoom. That's the Zoom challenge I'm going through right now, but it's okay. For me, I think I knew that 4 months before I left the US that I'm coming back and it would not be healthy mentally, job-wise, career-wise. It would not be healthy, but I do think that once you are an international scholar on a program and you go so far away from home, you learn new personality and mental habits that might help you in readjusting back to your home country. It may be something
Yeah.
that keeps you going, like you said, being consistent. This is something I wasn't. I was very impatient before, but now I learned to be like more consistent here. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Tara.
agreed.
And I
You're
think
welcome.
on that note, I think when you first mentioned that you broke into the development sector at an entry level, and it's amazing how you have built extensive experience, and I see you doing lots of public speaking, advocacy here. So, what would be your takeaway for anyone listening? Like, can you guide that?
I don't think I'm at a stage where I can give that advice. I'm still a student. I'm still learning every day, every
I'm
new
glad.
project. So I think this is something that I would really want people to something I would impart is to have that growth mindset.
Yeah,
Our learning does not stop at the end of the scholarship or at the end of the master's. And also in this sector, particularly when I talk about the development sector, it's so complex and it's always changing. Every day is a new day. So if you are fixed in your ways, if you are fixed in thinking, I know it all, this is how things are done, I think that's a downhill road. That's the biggest, I mean, I think that just sets you up for failure. So having a growth mindset, always trying to learn new things, not saying, oh, this is not my job or this is not my, role. Why should I do this? I remember, my past 3 years in the role with working with refugees. I was the only person in Sindh. So I was looking at not just program delivery, but also at communications, administration, logistics, managing the car, managing the
uh,
fuel in the car, literally everything, right? And that's totally fine. That is totally okay. To learn these new skills because I think they teach you so much about how systems work, right? And how important every element is. So there was a lot for me to learn, procurement rules. And why do I need to learn procurement rules, right? I'm a project management professional. I'm a, program delivery person. Why do I need to know procurement?
yeah.
But it's important. It's important because that is where a lot of that's compliance, that's policy. So I think understanding those things just gives you a bigger holistic picture. So having a growth mindset, learning new skills, learning how and understanding how this entire system works. So every part of it,
Uh,
and not just your part only. So if you're M&E. I remember when I mean we as program managers, I remember my seniors always used to say, you need to learn M&E. You need to know how that works. Because when I'm designing a
um,
program, if
um,
I don't understand how I will monitor it and evaluate it and assess it as per my targets or my intended outcomes, then basically it's all for nothing. How do you tell that something's worked, something hasn't worked? So if I
yeah,
don't have that skill, I don't have to be a master at it, but I need to understand it. So just
yeah,
having that openness to learn new things, to learn, every aspect of the sector, really helps, really helps. And I
yeah.
think that takes you further ahead in the career.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that reminded me,
You're welcome.
I was working with one applicant and they just broke into the development sector. They belong from KPK, like Peshawar. And as a female, she was telling me that it's very difficult to not wear multiple hats. Even though you're a junior and you're still wearing multiple hats. And I'm like, that's why you need a master. That's
Yes,
why they
yes,
ask you to go get
absolutely.
a master. It's to like zoom
Yeah.
out, get a holistic picture, system, processes, compliance, etc.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Because that helps you as you grow in your career and you are managing people who are
yeah,
doing procurement or who are doing finance. It just helps you because you have that background. They cannot say, "Okay, you don't know about
yeah,
finance. Why are you telling us?" But when you understand those things, I think it just makes you a better manager. You understand the limitations when your field team says, "Hey, this is not possible." And
yeah,
instead of you saying, you're making excuses because you worked at that level.
yes,
You know the reality. You know when they're making excuse and when it's a genuine issue. So it just builds your own knowledge and your skill set.
yeah. Thank you
Definitely.
very much. And
You're
I
welcome.
think we remember to talk about this, and let's just kind of wrap this up. How was the higher education system in Australia, and from your experience, anything that people should know about how it is different from other countries, maybe?
Excellent question. I think so coming from Pakistan, if I compare it to Pakistani education institutions, and I'm
Yeah,
and I'm counting like the top 10 or 20. So I think it is at par. It is definitely at par and it definitely better in terms of research opportunities.
I've
In
seen
terms
that too.
of, I don't know how to say it. I think our institutions are very marks oriented, right?
Mark
So
oriented.
the difference is that rigorousness, that chase that they tell you, that pressure. It's not a pressure cooker over there.
Yeah,
Over here, it's a pressure cooker. I mean, regardless of that, you get good grades, do this, GPA, maintaining that, etc., etc. Of course, it's there. You have to perform. You have to get, good grades to maintain your scholarship, etc. Those are definitely requirements that are additional on scholarship recipients.
yeah,
However, I think in terms of support, it is excellent. And by that, I mean there are a lot of support systems in place at the university level. They want, and it's designed in a way to enable us to succeed.
okay.
Unfortunately, I think one thing that where our education system in Pakistan needs to change is that our systems are designed to pressure our students and not help them perform or help them or support them through that process.
Yeah,
It's a lot of anxiety and stress that we go through those 4 years. So I didn't feel that. I remember there was a program or there was a policy where we could have free mental health checkups, now a couple of mental health checkups with the
nice.
health center every year, and it was free of cost and completely confidential. So did not would not be linked to your
Your
profile,
professor, yeah,
academic record, nothing. If you're feeling stressed or whatever. There were also a lot of, so I'll give you an example. There was a fund in place for people who get, for instance, face forced eviction or something. So, for instance, if somebody is, has to leave the house for whatever situation. I know a lot of people who are domestic violence survivors would, be in situations where they have to leave the house. There were funds in place that you could access uh,
mm,
up to almost like $1,000, a loan sort of that you could use to sort of cover that transition period, right?
yeah,
And
wow,
and then there were a lot of smaller things like, for instance, if you're struggling, whatever, for whatever reason, you want an extension in your deadline, you could always write to your professor and say, hey, I know my assignment is due on 24th tomorrow. Obviously, don't do it a day or 2 hours before the deadline, but if
yeah,
you tell them in advance that, hey, I'm struggling with this, etc., etc., could you extend it to just 2 more days? Don't misuse that levy, but they do. I realize
super,
I remember them being very flexible if it's a genuine concern. they would definitely do that. And then there were tutoring
Yeah,
services that you could access if you're struggling with a subject. You could always go for a tutor and get their support. So a lot of those things were there. It was not driven by marks. It was not driven by
yeah,
grades, but
yeah.
more about learning. I remember, I'm sorry giving too many examples, but just for people to
No,
prepare, I
please,
did development studies, and
please.
I did took up a lot of gender subjects. And when we talk about gender, there's obviously we will talk about gender-based violence and difficult topics like rape. I remember this one topic, which we were talking about violence and rape and war culture. And before that session, our professor was so kind enough to give us a disclaimer saying, hey, in the next, session, I'm going to be talking about this, 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 this. I am going to be showing some videos as well. I understand if this triggers somebody, you are welcome to sit this one out and no repercussions, right? I, I mean, over here, I remember if I have one more absence, I would just get an F in a subject, right?
Yeah, we will
Um,
get an which is
So,
quite
but over there, they were so mindful of the fact that, there could be a rape survivor or a rape victim in the class who might get
yeah,
triggered by that. So they used to be very mindful about it, and be very open that, hey, if this is something that you don't want to. And plus, the assignments and everything were designed to give us the to design for us to learn,
yeah,
right? So there will be, we would be given either sometimes multiple topics to choose from, so we could choose whichever best we did. Um, our deadlines, everything would be given to us well in advance so that we can plan things out accordingly. So I think a lot of those things, those systems, all together, coming together, were very supportive. Were
yeah,
very supportive.
glad.
The teachers would be very supportive. If you're struggling, if you're not participating in class, they would reach out to you and say, hey, is there anything we can do to help you participate? Is this a language barrier? Um, Aussies use a lot of slang, but I remember our professors being very nice and accommodating and use a very neutral accent.
Accommodating.
That's nice. I think that makes you want to go to class.
Yeah,
So yeah, I definitely would say that the Australian education system is very supportive, especially when I talk about international students. So it is very accommodating, it is supportive, but you also need to have that proactiveness and reach out. It cannot be one way.
yeah,
So
you have
so don't
to.
expect things to be given to you in a platter and misuse them. But yes, if you really need support, then there are multiple
Yeah.
avenues out there.
I'm so like glad that you talk about the need to be proactive because this is something I comment a lot that preparing students for graduate program that the way you write your application, the way you show up to me online on your in your professional community, that appearances matter a lot because it takes time to build those habits. And I think we both can agree that all generation need to be learners instead of assuming we know everything and all that. So that's where your habits change when you go on an international program and you realize you're so privileged, but you can't
Yeah.
misuse that.
Very true. Yes, very true. I completely agree. Second you.
Uh,
Yeah.
but do you have any like particular reflection or anything like apart from job, anything that went really well for you and you weren't expecting that? Feel free to do an humble brag here.
I think I was not expecting to find amazing group of friends who were like family over there.
Yeah.
So one of them is actually getting married, and I'm traveling tomorrow to Indonesia for
Oh,
his wedding. So
nice.
so nothing to brag about, but just something to celebrate.
Yeah.
That being open to new people, being open to those new friendships and new experiences is super essential.
Yeah. It's
And
so
that's where
interesting.
so many unexpected things and so many unexpected bonds and connections happen.
Yeah. I think that's the best part of generally an international program that if you want to get out of your comfort zone, you do find friends from around the world and want to be like a
Yeah,
part of their life wherever they are.
absolutely agree. Yes.
I wish you all the best for your travel and have fun in
Thank you so
Indonesia
much.
and hopefully in the development sector. You are making
Thank you
really
so
good
much.
impact. It may not be very obvious because things take time to build and monitoring evaluation. It can be very tough without the data here. You have to have the data here. But I think we can go all night, but the fact that you covered everything so beautifully and comprehensively from anyone who just breaking into the development sector, for anyone who is now experiencing, like, this kind of class line, stagnancy that globally funding is affected. But then you also talk about the realities of an international student out there, how it's important to be proactive. Thank you so much, Sarah, and I'm so glad we did this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.